decided at this point that this podcast thingy is just my general Disney Channel themed ranting zone. So, welcome back to another episode of the School on a Boat podcast, where I normally talk about The Sweet Life on Deck, the best show ever made. I have a whole episode on Cody and Bailey, finally finishing talking about their whole arc in of their relationship specifically. And I want to talk about this instead. So we're gonna do this first, and I'll circle back around to doing the Cody and Bailey finale. But then I also have to do them in season 2 and also them in season 1. We're almost done with the season 3 arc of Cody and Bailey. I've been loving to do their relationship almost in reverse. But anyways, today I want to talk about Teen Beach Movie, specifically Teen Beach 2, the sequel, and the fact that they are making a Teen Beach 3, allegedly. So I was on Twitter, which is not a good place to be, and is not a place I recommend anyone go to. The only reason why I was on Twitter is because I knew water parks were performing in Los Angeles tonight, and I was really hoping that Michael Clifford would show up, and he did. And they kissed, but that's not what this video is about. So while I was waiting to find that proof and that evidence happening, I ended up finding out about a lot of Disney Channel drama and beef and just like discussions that I'm usually not engaged with just because I don't use Twitter that often. Although I'm slowly becoming somebody who uses it more, which is a problem. But you know what? I'm telling myself that I'm using Twitter and I'm learning about these things so I can then inform my content, my videos on the topic. If I'm really quiet right now, that's because it is currently almost 3 a.m. Listen, this is just where this podcast exists in my whole channel, is just like me losing my mind in the middle of the night. So I'm pretty sure you guys are used to this by now. I'll warm up as the episode goes on, but yes, a updates account on Twitter informed everybody that there was a casting call for Teen Beach 3. So, seems like they're going to be doing it. Man, I gotta search through all these Moston screenshots to find my Teen Beach screenshots. Okay, here we go. It says specifically from this update account that the plot from the casting call is when Jules, Kai, and their friends get trapped inside the remake of a cursed classic. They realize the rumors about the original film were true. Now they must write their own escape. Many thoughts. Many thoughts. But let's continue. The next update was that the new main leads are Jules and Kai, and there's no information on Kai because apparently he's already been cast as Malachi Barton. Now, if I may go on my quick little Malachi Barton rant, which has nothing to do with him specifically, it's also my Milo Manheim rant because I have the exact same opinions on both of these milquetoast actors. Maybe offense, maybe no offense, I don't know, you can be the judge of that. And that is that Disney keeps casting them in everything. And they're clearly supposed to be like their new versions of like their Zac Efron type, right? They're looking for that new famous, like, you know, it boy that they can say that they discovered, right? They've been doing it really well with the girlies. You know, you've had Olivia Rodrigo, Sabrina Carpenter, Dove Cameron, Jenny Ortega, like, they've been doing just fine in the teen girl to like serious artist, like train, like they've always been doing. But for the male stars, they haven't been doing as well. And there's a whole convoluted reason as to why this is, I bet. And I don't want to get into it now because this is about Teen Beach Movie. However, one thing that is notable, in my opinion, is that these people... Sorry if you hear my dog snoring in the background. I don't know if you can see him. He's napping. He's asleep. He's not napping. He's asleep because it's in the middle of the night, and that's what people do at this time of the night. Anyways, the thing about like the Zac Efron types from back in the day was that they weren't in everything. Like, it seems like Disney Channel is only casting these two actors. I think Milo Manheim has finally moved on to Broadway or whatever. But, like, the only reason why Disney Channel has been only casting him and now his predecessor, Malachi Barton, is because they don't have anyone else. And it just reeks of desperation, in my opinion. And I don't know, maybe either of these male stars will become the next big thing. But it doesn't really seem like they are primed for the A-list in ways like artists, like the female artists have been, like Sabrina Carpenter and Jenny Ortega and stuff like that. So that's my hot take on that. Apparently they're also like bad people, or they just have bad politics, which doesn't really concern this video that much, but can be its own thing one day for somebody else who's interested in doing such a thing. I have my notes on paper, as always, as you guys know. Funny enough, this was actually recorded before it was announced that Milo Manheim was cast as Flynn Rider in the new Tangled live-action remake. I don't like these movies. Most people that I know in my personal life don't like these movies. And the fact that it's still a Disney project is also, it kind of reinforces my opinion further on this, when like people like Zac Efron were starring in 17 again and other like soapy rom-coms and stuff at the time. It just reinforces my thoughts in my opinion that they're trying to make Milo Manheim a thing, and I don't know if he's going to become a thing. He might not have the same kind of swagger that Zac Efron has, and I mean, I would like to be proven wrong that he's, a good actor and can, rise into the A-list, but I'm still not going to be a fan of his for reasons that I hope are obvious already. Sorry, that was my phone going off. Back to the rest of the podcast. So as for the plot, I am a bit nervous, but also I'm slightly lukewarm to the idea. I'm warming up to the idea of what this whole movie can be. Well, first of all, it's a requel. If you guys don't know what a requel is, a remake sequel, where it's a remake, so they have a whole new cast of characters. But it is also a sequel, as in it's still continuing the previous stories, but no one from the previous stories wanted to come back. So they are doing a whole new cast of characters. So it's like a light reboot, but it's also a sequel. It still exists in the universe, but it's still a reboot because we have a whole new cast of characters. So a requel. We're getting a requel here. And considering the original Teen Beach movie was so meta, and that was like the whole point, was it making fun of, that 1960s teen beach movie genre. That's a real genre of film that they were like parodying. And there's so much homage to the 1960s. And because we're in just like a slop-filled remake culture currently, which Disney is like the main perpetrator of, in my opinion, it only makes sense that if they were to do a requel, that it would comment on the fact that it's a requel by having the characters go into a remake of the original Teen Beach movie, so Wet Side Story, right? Like they made a reboot of Wet Side Story, and the new kids in their own reboot of the Teen Beach movie series have been put into the reboot. Like it can get very meta in that sense, and so I can appreciate that they would want to do that, and they wouldn't just want to put them back in Wet Side Story, probably because they probably couldn't get the actual actors back, right? Some of them have gone on to be like actually famous and do important things, so that's its own thing. It also kind of feels like it'd be a little bit of a Scream situation, which I think famously also talked about the requel before that series inevitably got canceled, again, because of bad politics. Wow. But from the industry, not the actor, where it's like what happened in the original movies is like a legend, like a mythical tale in the current ones. So it seems like Teen Beach Movie is going to be like Disney Channel, the closest the thing that Disney Channel can get to like the Scream franchise when it comes to commentary and meta-ness and everything. And so like that's fine. That's fine. I'm okay with that. But there was something that someone on Twitter did comment on. I never wanted to become one of these people that comments on things that people have tweeted, but I do think that this is what sparked my interest in talking about this in the first place. This person, Sarah, apparently said they're going to ignore that the ending of Teen Beach 2 erased the existence of Wet Side Story and make it a reboot of that movie, aren't they? Very, very likely. And that's what got me spiraling on the concept of Teen Beach 2 and its whole story plotline and everything. And controversially, how much I like Teen Beach 2 compared to most people who think it sucks, which is a perfectly valid opinion to have, but still. I have many, many thoughts on this. For those of you who have seen my dcom video, where I ranked and reviewed every Disney Channel original movie, Teen Beach 2 is quite high. It's not higher than Teen Beach Movie. I'm pretty sure Teen Beach Movie is in my top 10, if not my top 5. Definitely in my top movies ever of all time. And Teen Beach 2 is like surprisingly high. It's like, I don't know where exactly it lands, but yeah, it's up there. It's up there in numbers. So I have some thoughts on it that I did share in that my little 3-minute review. But I want to talk about now within the context of it getting a continuation, which I never thought would happen. But before we do that, I also want to comment specifically on the choices that Disney Channel has made of their current DCOM remakes, because the remake, epidemic that's been going on in Disney for like almost a decade at this point, or I think officially a decade at this point, has within within this current decade, within the beginning of the 2020s, has finally made its way to the DCOMs. So with the DCOMs, I think it's notable which ones they've chosen to reboot or to remake, to requel, if you will, because I think it says a lot about their like legacy, or like who they're maybe trying to cater to at the end of the day. Specifically when it comes to the DCOM, the TV shows I can't say so as much because I'm not really as locked into the TV shows, for many reasons. It's just it overwhelms me. So, anyways, yes, from what I just off the top of my head in the middle of the night while sleep deprived, the remakes that they've done so far have been Under Wraps. I'm counting High School Musical because of the TV show. I'm just going to count that one. They could never do a movie. They decided to make it a TV show instead of a movie because it's that big of a deal, right? So Under Wraps, High School Musical, recently Camp Rock, right? Camp Rock 3 is coming out. And then now Teen Beach Movie. And other than the movies that never finished, so they've just like gone into infinity, so like the Marvel movie equivalent in the DCOM world, right? If these remakes are like the live action remakes, like of Cinderella and Snow White and all that stuff for the DCOMs, if like Teen Beach Movie and High School Musical and stuff is like that version, then like the Zombies and Descendants franchises still not ending and possibly even being softly rebooted as we currently are speaking, in my opinion, can be seen as like an example of like the Marvel movies where they just like have never ended, but we're just getting more of them, more and more and more of them, like people are saying Zombies 5 is probably going to happen. I don't doubt that it won't happen. Whether or not the original cast will be in it is what's really up for debate. And Descendants 6 is currently... Descendants 6? Yeah, no. I don't remember what number they're on right now. Listen, I'm tired. So they're on another movie. And from what I heard, there's some rumors that the Rise of Red arc is going to be done. We will get into that another day if you guys are interested, though. Are you guys interested in modern Disney Channel as much as I am? I find it very fascinating because I see it as a ticking time bomb. Like one day it's all just going to explode and they're not going to exist anymore. But like we're just waiting. We're just waiting for the day. We're just tick, looking at the clock. That's my personal opinion. Although I bet people have very, very different views on that, considering how successful so much of this modern stuff has been. So I get it. However, when looking at that list of remakes, Under Wraps may at first seem like an outsider, but it is the first ever DCOM. So I think that's like them speaking to legacy or whatever, But for the rest of those movies came out in very specific time periods that I think are very like nostalgic to current 20-somethings, 20s and 30s something year old people, So I feel like in a lot of ways, they're almost sort of appealing to that age demographic. The problem with appealing to said age demographic is that they don't watch things made for babies, and Disney Channel refuses to make anything slightly grown up at all with any of their like in-house media. I think that's what happened to the Lizzie McGuire reboot. They were supposed to make a Lizzie McGuire TV show, and that just fell through because basically Hilary Duff was like, I want it to be for grown-ups who grew up watching the show. I want that to be the main audience, which means that it would be like TV 14 at most, and Disney Channel just could not handle that. And that's why stuff like Raven's Home and Wizards of Waverly Place Beyond, or whatever it's called, Beyond Wizards of Waverly Place, why those got greenlit, because the leads helming it, Raven Simonier and David Henry, were willing to make it like a show for babies, or just like a kid's show, Whether or not those shows have the same level of complexity that the original Disney Channel shows did when they have the same rating is up for debate. However, yeah, they're not they're less family friendly films in my opinion, and they're more of the equivalent of jingling keys in front of a baby's face. But like, that's just me being cynical about things. Uh, you know, you know how I am, how I can be at times. However, yeah, I think that that's very notable that they've been picking specifically like nostalgia bait almost movies, which it's like, well, that's the whole point of remakes, right? Is to bait on nostalgia. So for kids who don't know that it's a remake, it's just like a new movie for them, so that's fine. But then to get even more, eyeballs on the project, it's like people who remember it from way back when. So it's a whole thing. It's a whole industry that Disney as a corporation basically invented, and everyone's copying now. That is running on fumes at this point. Audiences are upset and unsettled and don't want it anymore, but they're not stopping. So something's gonna give at some point. We'll just have to wait and see. However, to talk about Teen Beach 3 specifically, like I said, it's not that this concept is bad, because it'll comment on this like hellscape of remakes and stuff that I've just been talking about. So at least that's at least something that's interesting. However, I feel like the fatigue is too far past the point of irony and satire and what's it called? Fourth wall breaks. But maybe that's just my appetite, and other people are still really excited for this. So the thing, though, about making Teen Beach 3 is that, yeah, you have to deal with the elephant in the room, which is Teen Beach 2. And Teen Beach 2 ends very weirdly. I guess I'll give a brief plot synopsis for people who don't know. You probably already know the plot of Teen Beach movie. Modern day kids get stuck in Wet Side Story, a beach movie from the 1960s, and they have to escape, and there's some really great character development. It's all very simple storytelling. Like, I'm not saying it's reinventing the wheel or anything. It is, yeah, extremely simple storytelling, but it's done effectively and in a way that endears the audience to the characters. So to make a sequel was inevitable. They hinted at it in the mid-credit sequence back when that was like just a cute little thing that people did. Now everyone hates them. But yeah, during the mid-credit sequence, they hinted at the fact that the next movie would be the characters from Wet Side Story coming into the real world. And that's an extremely interesting and cool and fascinating concept, and they fully expound upon that in the sequel. So the sequel starts with our two main characters kind of being disillusioned with each other just a little bit because of teenage woes, and then our two main characters from Wet Side Story enter the picture, and they gain sentience as fully fleshed beings as they become more a part of the real world, and they have to get them back to their movie. If they don't get them back to their movie in time, then they'll all like poof from existence. Your classic Back to the Future stakes, right? That was the same in the original movie as well. And they fail. Well, they don't fail. What happens is that the main female character learns that feminism exists and that she wants to be a girl boss back in her time period of the movie. And so she's convinced by Mac, who's the main female lead, to change the story of Wet Side Story and make it her own story instead of just like a sappy romance. So she does. And because of that, because whether or not you believe that it's retconned or not, Brody, right, that's his name? I hope that's his name, because I'm gonna say Brody. Ross Lynch's character, Brody, and Mac, they apparently met watching Wet Side Story. Whether you want to believe that that's like a retcon or not is up to you. But yeah, Wet Side Story and is how they met, is how these two characters were together. So if Wet Side Story never existed, then that means that they would never know each other. And so that's what happens. They don't know each other anymore, and the whole universe is reset because the movie changed. And they fall back in love with each other again at the end of the movie. Now, this is what's so controversial, is that they retcon the entire first movie as never happening, basically. Like, the first movie that people love and adore so much never canonically is not real anymore. It never happened, because it was all deleted from the universe because of the plot twist spooky, high stakes ending. Now, the reason why I said that I liked this so much is because I thought it was daring of them to do this. It was very ballsy to do something this weird and like avant-garde and kind of scary in a random decom. And that really enlightened me. And you have to remember also the context of me watching that movie. It was like in the span of like 6 other decoms in one sitting. So it was like, again, probably a similar time at night, like 2-3 in the morning. And I was just sitting there on my couch, like slowly entering a dilapidated, erratic state, just watching boring movie after boring movie, and then something actually interesting happens for once. So I think that does flavor in a lot of ways my opinion. However, I did go back and rewatch the movie later, and I could definitely still say that I find it unique and fun and interesting. It's messy. It's very like not clean. It's like not a clean break. It doesn't make a lot of sense in a lot of ways. But I kind of like that. I like the messy storytelling of it all, because the first movie, while being good, at the end of the day is pretty basic. Not that basic is bad. But yeah, it's standard basic storytelling in a lot of ways. And this one is just so much more funky. And I kind of like the funk a little bit. It's kind of like the blue cheese of the decoms. Man, I'm losing my mind. Not that the movie's perfect, though. I do want to clarify as well. There are some problems. Like, I think the beginning of the movie is quite slow. It takes us a while to get to the point where the characters in Wet Side Story end up coming into the real world. I feel like the movie should have started with Mac and... Is his name Brady and not Brody? I don't know. Sorry, guys. I could look it up. It should have started with them in school and already broken up, because how the movie starts is that they're still happy and in love with each other like they were at the end of the first movie, and then they start high school and they realize that they're different people and they have different lives, and their lives don't really mesh. They were in love in through summer break, and now that they're in school, like their own respective cliques or whatever are just like not meshing as well. They take a more nuanced approach to that, but at the end of the day, that is kind of still what's happening. Like, Brady is like a surfer dude who's not really that smart. He wasn't like that in the original movie, so I will say they're what's it called? They're kind of flanderized a bit in the second movie, and Mac is like this super smart, girl. They basically make it High School Musical, is what I have to say. Dumb jock and smart girl, right? If it ain't broke, don't fix it. That's what Disney Channel usually says to these things. They've remade High School Musical like 5 times. Even before High School Musical came out, they were just doing that, dynamic with their characters. But and then they break up, and it's when they're broken up that the Wet Side Story characters, enter the picture. And I feel like I understand maybe why they decided to not do that, because they didn't want the movie to start on a low note. They wanted it on a high note. And also, we do get the fun little revelation of seeing the final number in Teen Beach Movie, because famously, the characters leave before like the final big show-stopping number. And the final big show-stopping number for Teen Beach Movie happens in the real world, right? Which is its own lore, convoluted, breaking thing. My theory is that they brought a little bit of the musical back with them into the real world, which is why they all break out into song in the real world, but then never do so again. So we actually get to see what the actual final big show-stopping show number would have been in Wet Side Story at the beginning of Teen Beach 2. So that's kind of cute. But, however, I feel like they still could have included that little meta moment while still having the setup be that, the 2 main characters are broken up and not on good terms and have already started school. You know what I mean? Because the whole point is that the fact that they're not together throughout most of the movie, because real world conflicts are getting in the way of their like whirlwind romance, rom-com storyline, right? And the characters from Wet Side Story are like, dang, that sucks. That's not what love is like in our universe. It's all very simple and wrapped up with a bow. Versus in the real world, it's complicated and messy, which is what the movie is in it of itself. So like the structure of the movie is reflecting the themes and messages it's trying to portray, which is why I like the messiness so much. Because it's like, of course, the plot of the movie where they're in a movie. The meta-ness is that it's very clean and simple and easy to understand. And so then the plot of a movie where they're in the real world is not wrapped up super easily and has loose ends and is complicated and messy, because that's what our real world is like. Like there was thought. I feel like that was intentional. I always give these movies the benefit of the doubt, and everyone always calls me like crazy for giving them the benefit of the doubt. And then when I say dcom is bad, I get called pretentious. So there's really no winning. But at the end of the day, I'm passionate enough about this topic to where it doesn't matter what people say about it. This is just what I feel. So I will agree that the movie's a bit slow to start. The songs are not as good as they were in the original. However, it's kind of hard to beat those original songs. Those are some of the best Disney Channel original movie songs of all time. However, the choreography is as good as ever. And I would also say the costuming. I know the costuming can get very 2010s looking. Like seeing Mac in skinny jeans at the beach is quite funny. And I really like what they do with the Wet Side Story characters. We see them, like I said, gain sentience, and in a very realistic way. My one complaint was that when it comes to the male character, he didn't really get as much as the female character, because this was like the girl boss era of things, so they had to be very, very girl boss about the whole situation, right? Which is fine. It's bordering on a bit annoying in the movie, but only bordering on. Like that whole concept of change the ending for yourself and make it a feminist movie. It's like, she can still have romance, you know what I mean? Like it could still be a romantic story while also having romance, which obviously this movie proves by being that, right? For having a strong, independent main character woman, and having her be in a romance and fall in love. Like, both can happen at the same time. Disney likes to ignore this most of the time and thinks that romance is weak, which is lame, but it kind of says that in this version where they change it to Queen of the Beach instead of Wet Side Story. But it's not that the romance isn't there. We don't know what the plot of that movie is. I would love it if for Teen Beach 3... that's the movie, the rewritten movie from, in the new universe. That's the movie that they get entered into. Or a remake of that movie, because it's supposed to be a remake. And also, what time period is the remake going to be from? Because the Teen Beach movie, the original Teen Beach movie, was commenting on a lot of, 1960s, fashion and culture and stuff. So it's like, what will it be commenting on in this movie? Will it be, the 90s? Because if we think about it, there was 50 years in between the time periods of the 60s and then the 2010s. So technically, since this movie is going to be coming out in the 2020s, it should be taking place in the 70s. But reboots weren't really a thing in the 70s. The movie industry was just completely different from what it is now. So the context wouldn't make any sense. So they'd probably have it be something awkwardly too soon or recent that they're going to be commenting on. They might even dare to have it even set in the 2010s. And they'll comment on 2010s culture, because apparently the Gen Zers are really into that. Although I bet the boomers who are working at Disney Channel right now don't know about that. So it might even be the 1980s or something like that, because there were a couple of remakes in the 1980s if I remember correctly. So who knows? That's going to be its own aspect that I bet will annoy plenty of people, or at least make the movie worse or better depending on how your framework or view standpoint is. I was talking about how I like the way that the characters from Wet Side Story gained sentience throughout the story. The bits, of course, of them being from a movie in the real world are quite fun, and they're played really, really well. The fact that Tanner always has the perfect gelled hair and their hair doesn't get wet, right? Because they're in a beach movie where they're constantly at the water, yet their hair is perfect, and that's because they're usually on a green screen when they're supposed to be in the water, right? They recreate that really well in Teen Beach Movie. There's so much charm, and that's another aspect of Teen Beach Movie that is so beautiful in a way that it would have never been made in modern Disney. Not only because they don't have the stars and the audience to back up, people watching it, but also because they would never greenlight something this weird and eclectic. There was no cultural zeitgeist to attach to that movie. They weren't making it because people were nostalgic for the 60s in that era. No, in the 1980s was the real nostalgia bait for the 2010s. versus like nowadays it's like the 2000s, right? The whole Y2K thing. So it was a very unique and like off the wall kind of like plot line to do, kind of story to tell, and it's a really good one. And like I said, because it's not like banking on some sort of like already built-in audience, it would never have been made today. It's actually a somewhat original concept and story. And also, I think Teen Beach Movie, in the context of the DCOM, is very fascinating because in a lot of ways, it's basically like, in my opinion, and this might just be my nostalgia talking because I'm in my mid-20s or my early mid-20s. So, like, Teen Beach Movie was the last DCOM I ever watched on TV before no longer watching the Disney Channel. So maybe that's why to me it's like an important linchpin, like in the timeline. But I think for other more factual reasons other than just my personal vibes, that it's like a demarcation point in DCOMs. One, because it was the only DCOM to come out in the year it came out in, and that was kind of proof that they were going to start slowing down the amount of DCOMs they were making, and the frequency of them I feel like was like a defining like aspect of the DCOM early on for a majority of the DCOMs that have existed. Like the fact that there was a lot of them that were coming out frequently with like really famous stars was important in my opinion to like its branding. Yeah, and that quickly changed after Teen Beach Movie. And I would also say that it was one of the last DCOMs to get like a lot of views. I think technically Descendants is the last one of their DCOMs to ever crack the 1 million viewers mark when it comes to basic TV, like as it aired. And even then, it had to simulcast. Like, I think Descendants 2 is in the top 10 most viewed DCOMs of all time. But even then, it had to like simulcast on multiple different Disney-owned networks to get that number that high versus Teen Beach Movie, which just got that on just one network. And also, I should clarify, specifically, a network you had to pay for on extra cable packages for those who don't remember how cable worked. Like, Descendants had to air on ABC, stuff that you could just get with your local antenna. If you just like stick an antenna on the side of your house, you could watch all your, local basic channels. They had to air Descendants 2 on like those channels and like Lifetime and what's it called? Like all those channels. ABC Family. I don't know what it's called anymore. It's called something different, but like ABC Family and all that stuff. They had to air Descendants 2 on just to get a similar close number to what Teen Beach Movie was able to get just from a network that most people had to pay extra on their cable packages to get. Like, that's how big of a deal the Disney Channel used to be, and it has just never reached those heights since. So in many ways, that's why I see Teen Beach Movie as demarcation point. So to remake it is to kind of like almost try and harken back to the good old days, which in a lot of ways is very ironic because that may or may not be what the original movie was commenting on, is the 60s being the good old days and that being like the high point of movie musicals, because the DCOM was carrying movie musicals on its back basically, because famously they have not been box office movies for a while now. That again, it was the 50s and the 60s that it was really starting to die off. So it's kind of like the Teen Beach Movie trend of the 60s was kind of like the last gasp and the last hurrah of the movie musical. So to like call back to it is to like call back to that legacy. And in a similar way, Disney Channel might be trying to do that again by rebooting it. And I find that fascinating. The ending, while also being quite convoluted, I do think it does a great job of building emotional stakes for the characters, even though it all gets deleted at the end. I understand. That doesn't mean that we didn't experience it, though, because we got to, like, watch the movie and stuff. It's not like this is, like, a Marvel movie or, like, Once Upon a Time or anything, where, like, the whole point is plot. All the show is plot. So when they reboot something or, like, soft, like chop out whole chunks of plot, it really can feel like it was wasting your time. But like the journey that the characters go through and how that affects us personally is, in my opinion, kind of more of what matters about these movies. So the fact that like we still experienced them means that they're not dead, because they're in our minds forever or whatever. If you still want to be mad about the retcon though, like that's perfectly valid because it is a like I said, spooky thing to do in general. So in that way I understand, but the emotional stakes of like these characters might die, right? The Wet Side Story characters might literally poof out of existence, and our main characters in the real world are like they might possibly, never have met each other and become strangers once again. That is some real stakes, and stakes that we don't really get in your average everyday dcom. Even the weirder ones like Stepsister from Planet Weird. It's like I quite like how intense that is, in my opinion. It was a bold choice, like I said. And oh man, specifically when they do the reprise of Meant to Be, I was sitting there bawling my eyes out, and I mean like strong, painful crying, like I was heaving, and I got like some snot dribbling out of my nose, like it was bad. But then again, that was probably the exhaustion from being like almost like 90 movies in by that point, so that could probably be speaking to that a little bit. But in general, emotionally devastated by that revelation when they did that reprise of the song, because I think it's just good storytelling, okay? But at the end of the day, like I said, if the like possible like reality breaking elements don't do it for people, then that's fine. However, I'm personally somebody who values like emotional stakes and how the movie is able to make me feel more than like plot. At the end of the day, plot doesn't have to mean that much as long as the story and the emotional weight of the story is what matters the most, is what is the most effective, is done the best. And it definitely was in these movies for me, in my opinion. So am I excited for Teen Beach 3? At the end of the day, no. I don't think I can be, just because, well, knowing that they've already casted Malachi Barton, which I'm not going to say he's a bad actor or dancer or singer or whatever, but like, and again, this might be my bias because famously Ross Lynch is one of my favorite actors ever, singers ever. I really like the Driver era. He when I was in high school, it was a running joke with my friends that I had a thing for Ross Lynch, that he was my celebrity crush. So it's not fair to compare them with me specifically, but he's not Ross Lynch. He doesn't have that energy. I had kind of like an insult that eventually turned into a compliment about Ross Lynch, specifically during his dcom days, because I know he's a good actor now. He's done some really good acting work post Disney Channel, but during his Disney Channel days, I think it's easy to maybe joke about or clown on his acting abilities specifically, because the delivery in certain scenes is very Disney Channel, like the way that people make fun of on the internet all these days about Disney Channel acting, how it's just so overdramatic and so theatrical, and how that just doesn't compute or play with what like people understand modern day acting to be, right? So it's easy to make fun of it. I think I specifically said to my friend once, and I feel really bad about it, but I was joking that it was like almost like porn acting, where it's like you're here to watch him sing and dance. So whatever he's doing before that, as long as the lines are being said and you can hear them, that's all that matters, right? And I want to rescind that because again, Ross Lynch, he's my fave, so I don't want to say anything. I don't want to be insulting towards him, but like specifically, there is that intense theatricality to like that children's acting style, that I think it made me actually have an existential crisis when I was really thinking about it, because I'm like, what is acting? What is reality? Isn't there supposed to be an element of farce or like artificiality to this, because it's not real? This isn't reality. It's like we're watching this to be entertained. And am I not entertained? Right? But my existential crisis about that aside, I think even the artificiality of his acting still played perfectly to the Disney Channel sentiment and style and world. Like, he feels like a Disney Channel actor. And no offense to Malachi Barton and this whole new cast of Disney Channel stars, but they don't have that sauce. They don't have that sauce. And I don't know if it's because they just have different casting people, different people working behind the scenes to cast these people, or if the people who have the sauce are not going to Disney Channel, they're not starting from there anymore. I think of like the current like up and coming male actors, like that guy from Red, White, and Royal Blue and that movie where Anne Hathaway looked really hot, where I'm like, he would have been a Disney Channel guy in an alternate timeline where Disney Channel was still popping off, you know? Or that guy from the How to Train Your Dragon live action remake. Like, he seems like a Disney Channel guy who has now made it to, theatrically released movies in a similar way that so many other male actors from the Disney Channel did back in the day, right? But they're not starting at the Disney Channel. And the Disney Channel stars are, like, flaming out. They're, like, flaming out in the Disney Channel, sphere. They're not progressing to that next level. Maybe Milo Manheim you could interpret as possibly because he was on Broadway with Liz Gillies. So like, you could say that maybe in a way he's, evolved past that. But in my opinion, in many ways, the Disney Channel is just not getting the best and brightest future stars. And so that is contributing to the quality of the story of the movies not being that bad. Not being that good, I mean. However, I don't want to entirely blame the actors because at the end of the day, they're doing a job and they're doing the best that they can with the material that they're given. And the actual true problem, it's easiest to point at the actors because they're in front of the screen. But the actual, I think, true problem at Disney Channel's core is that they're just like lost and confused and do not have their pulse on the teenage zeitgeist anymore because the teenage zeitgeist is online. It's not on Disney Channel. They've had this problem since the Descendants days, in my opinion, which is already rearing on gonna be a decade old. And I think those movies were able to succeed because they had someone like Kenny Ortega behind the wheel, even if it was very out of touch and in a lot of ways did not play to, the current time period like movies like High School Musical did. They still had some guiding direction, and I feel like that's gone. Even if the people like Kenny Ortega are still working there, they've lost their touch. Sometimes there's just no more gas left in the tank at the end of the day. And they're probably hoping a thing like Teen Beach 3 might rejuvenate them. Or maybe they're just hoping to get some more stuff out to meet their quota. And that's all that really matters at the end of the day. It'd be sad to hear and be sad to see. But, at the end of the day, the DCOM has kind of always been that. Just people trying to get their quota out because the corporation demands that we reach these certain milestones. However, at least in the early days, like, people didn't care about the DCOM, so there was no, like, real stakes. So they were able to make some actually really good and interesting stuff. And art was still able to thrive under those intense working conditions, and it just isn't as much as it probably could be. Not to say that these Descendants movies and Zombies movies are bad, but where is the creativity going to flow when that's all we're allowed to make? Is more Descendants, more zombies, and live action or just remakes, just reboots and remakes, I would love to see that fresh, rejuvenating energy present in Teen Beach 3, but I don't have my hopes up that it's going to be there. And maybe that's really cynical of me. This is a very cynical podcast episode, which I'm usually not like this, but I think I was reserving my very cynical takes from the DCOM video because I know that the main audience for a video like that is like Disney Channel fans, and clearly if you're a current Disney Channel fan, that means that you like the things that current Disney Channel is making. I've always felt like a sort of oddball for I've never had like a deeper connection to Descendants in the way that like so many other people do, even though I do quite like them and I think they're really great movies. I don't have that deeper connection that most of the current fandom does, which is why they're currently in the fandom in the first place to begin with, right? And so I might be a little bit more cynical, and I usually reserve my more cynical takes for the group chat or to bug people with at dinner parties, but I felt as though I should explain some of my thoughts on that today. This is generally a more upbeat podcast, I promise. We usually talk about the Sweet Life on Deck, and I have the book Disney High, not with me right now, but it's in another room. I have the book Disney High which is a book about Disney Channel, about the rise and fall of Disney's tween empire, as it says. And they have a whole chapter on Zack and Cody that I'm going to make a whole podcast episode about. And I am only halfway through it right now. I haven't finished reading it, but yeah, it tells the story of how Disney Channel got their grubby little hands on the Sprouse twins. And we will be breaking that down eventually, as well as breaking down the entire relationship of Cody and Bailey. So we started with the breakup in Paris, and we went all through season 3, and we're going to finish up season 3. That'll probably be the exact next episode, is me finishing the season 3 arc. So talking about Cody and Bailey specifically in like the last 3 or 4 episodes of the series. And then we're going to circle back to the relationship in season 2 and season 1, which will probably just be one episode on its own, but we'll have to see, because famously I thought all of my thoughts on season 3 would be one video, and now it's become 3, because I made a whole podcast episode just on the Twister 3-parter of The Sweet Life of Zack and Cody. The Sweet Life on Deck, specifically. So, yeah, we mainly talk about The Sweet Life of Zack and Cody and The Sweet Life on Deck, but I will be expanding it to talk about more things. And you know what? This was a good topic to pick to start off with, because of the nautical theme, because of beach, Team Beach, right? School on a boat. I don't know. So yeah, thank you for listening to my Disney Channel ramblings, and make sure to like and subscribe. This is my side channel. I have a main channel where I talk about crazy things. I'm supposed to be working on my video on Pixel Perfect right now, but instead, I'm ranting. So I'm going to go edit that now, and hopefully that'll be out in a couple days, either before or after this comes out. Check out my video on Pixel Perfect, and I'll see you next time, guys, hopefully in a couple of weeks or so. Bye-bye.